Whether you like Donald Trump or whether you dislike Donald Trump from a political standpoint, the media is picking up on all of it on both sides. That gives me something to talk about in the office. It gives me something to campaign or something to market to. If Donald Trump is saying on one hand, hey, I think we should reduce or cut taxes on Social Security, that's right in the middle of my client base. And then if Donald Trump does what he does best and flies off the handle about another particular situation, I can be like, yeah, I really appreciate some of the policies. I wouldn't let my wife alone in a room with the guy.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome into Ready, Set, Grow, Strategies for Financial Advisors. We've got another good one. Abe Ashton, a longtime advisor here at Impact and been doing the whole financial planning thing for even longer. So really a wealth of knowledge. I had a list of nicknames that I wanted to rattle off for you, but I'll just go with the pickleball maestro.
Yes, let's keep that. If I'm known by that in perpetuity, that would be perfect. I love it.
Abe's the namesake of our pickleball court just on the other side of this wall in our digital studio. If you're looking for any kind of other resources, our YouTube channel is a great resource, great place to start. House rules, selling with stories, just some of the ways that financial advisors can grow their practice. We have Abe in the hot seat today because we are approaching political season, election time, and those situations where virtually every financial advisor is going to find themselves. They're going to be sitting across from a client or prospect or in a seminar and having what can be awkward conversations if you're not prepared.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, how do you approach politics and the subject of politics in your office?
Well, I would say carefully, but not nearly as carefully as I started out. Earlier on in years, I'd be like, well, I don't want to offend anybody. And it's not the reverse of that, but now it's much more relax. We all have different political opinions, and people didn't come to me originally for my political advice or for my political affiliation. They came to me for my experience in finance or retirement. So I don't think I can change that a whole lot with a political opinion. And if I do, when we talked about this a little bit earlier, if that were to change the way somebody feels about me, we may not be a great fit anyway. So while I'm not hanging up campaign posters in my office for a particular candidate, what I am doing is having conversation about how a more progressive campaign or a more progressive candidate might affect taxes, might affect retirement versus a more conservative. And when people ask me, they'll say, well, how do you feel or whatever? I say, well, I hate all politicians equally. That's how I feel.
And I've heard you use that in your seminar, that line right there.
I use that all the time, and it's because it's true. And I'll say things frequently like, you know what, I can't believe I've got to hold my nose and vote this way. Mm-hmm. Or I can't believe this is the best the country has to offer. On either side, on all sides. That can be about the House, that can be about the Senate, that can be about the next president, that can be about local politics. Because more and more, the more I see it, the more I watch the political campaigns, the more I realize these aren't the best of Americans. The best of Americans are the ones that I get to work with and see in my office. They're the people I'm playing pickleball with on the pickleball court. And I just wish that there were more of those people in our politics.
You mentioned the transition from when you were a young advisor to where you are now. I'm curious to know, because I imagine if we do have a younger advisor who doesn't feel comfortable and feels awkward in those situations, was there sort of a light bulb moment, or what went into that transition for you where you got more comfortable?
Yeah, younger and newer Abe in the industry would have been so concerned about losing a particular client that I may have lost the client anyway by being disingenuous or insincere. So my advice to myself or anybody else in that situation would be to still be yourself. You don't have to go out and start hammering and saying, hey, here is this candidate and I am pro whatever it is, right? You just say, no, I feel like we can use less regulation in a lot of areas. Or I feel like there are some better social policies that we can look at. I feel like school teachers, and you go with the things that people can all agree on.
Yeah.
You know what? There are some social policies or social programs like firefighters, police officers, school programs, public school systems. Those are social policies. I feel like we need to pay those people better. And so when you're saying things that everybody can agree with, that would be somebody more on a liberal perspective that you can get behind on common ground. more conservative side, you might say, yeah, we can use lower taxes in a lot of different areas. We can use deregulation in a lot of different areas. That could be a more conservative view without going out and saying, no, I'm part of this party, I'm voting for this person. So being sincere about some of your beliefs that are kind of bilateral is a good way to start without going out and kind of campaigning.
In our little pre-show meeting that we had, I swore we weren't going to talk about politics. We're staying apolitical just as much. We're preaching that financial advisors need to be able to stay neutral in these conversations. That said, when you bring in a guy like Donald Trump into an election and he can be so divisive and so polarizing, really, and like you said, sometimes that's what his fan base really likes is he bucks the trends. He's not that normal candidate.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know from your perspective, what are the big differences between an election with Donald Trump in it versus some of the previous elections, whether it's Obama-Romney or even a Bush-Kerry, approaching those elections versus one that involves Donald Trump?
Well, I think one of the things that I like the most about it is got everybody talking, right? Whether you like Donald Trump or whether you dislike Donald Trump from a political standpoint, the media is picking up on all of it on both sides. And that gives me something to talk about in the office. It gives me something to campaign or something to market to. If Donald Trump is saying on one hand, hey, I think we should reduce or cut taxes on Social Security, that's right in the middle of my client base. Mm-hmm. That's something that I can stick to. And then if Donald Trump does what he does best and flies off the handle about another particular situation, I can be like, yeah, I really appreciate some of the policies. I wouldn't let my wife alone in a room with the guy. You know what I mean? Which is true how I feel. As an entrepreneur, as a businessman, I've benefited from some very good conservative policies in my perspective. And on the other hand, there's some things where I look and say, yeah, but there are a lot of people out there who feel the same way that just seem to be better human beings by nature. But maybe they don't have the tenacity to get in the fight or the hunt or the money to do it. So at the end of the day, still, I'm not afraid to state my opinion on things, but I still try to keep them broader than micro, where I'm actually saying, well, this particular issue, because then you're asking people to choose one side or the other.
Pick a side. Yeah. When it comes to your office, have you ever made the mistake of just kind of assuming where someone's allegiance is? I mean, you mentioned business owners and just assuming that, because they own a business, they probably skew this way and making that assumption.
Well, I think we all do that a little bit within our state, and I have made mistakes that way, but I think that more conservative states, if you're in red states, you automatically lean and think most of the people who are coming are probably going to be on that side of more conservative politics. The blue states, if you're working in New York City or if you're working in Delaware, you might assume you've got, unless you're out in the country, but if you're in the city, you might assume that people are a little more liberal.
Yeah.
And that's probably safe, but there's definitely going to be exceptions. So you don't want to get caught
burn yourself
pigeonholing everybody on that side. And I had that happen in an appointment just last week where I was sitting down with a couple that I would have assumed they were far more conservative. And we were having some conversations about the campaign naturally. And I was doing my normal thing where I wasn't really picking sides. And she said, I just can't stand the man. And I knew exactly who she was talking about and exactly what she was concerned about. And I didn't immediately go, well, I can't stand the man either, because that wouldn't be true.
Yeah.
And I still credit myself on being genuine and sincere. And I can look her in the eyes and I can say, I can see what some people really find offensive. And I can appreciate that. And I can also see what some people really value and treasure about not having a career politician or somebody who's more conservative in some of the policy making. So I can see both sides of it. Man, I just wish we had better people in general in politics.
Kind of toe that line where you think you've got some more, a little bit larger of a plank to walk on.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I think language matters tremendously in our lives. And I think especially when you're talking about politics and how divisive and how inflamed people can get. So when you talk about the 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Act,
Trump tax cuts.
Pause for cricket. Well, you beat me
Trump
to
tax
it,
cuts. Trump tax cuts. Trump tax cuts.
And Obamacare and these things that have a connotation associated with them because they have the name tied to them. Do you try and steer away from that language? What do you do then?
Not at all. And the reason why is because I know the proper language. And anytime we advisors can say 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Acts or the net investment income tax, when we use the proper name, it builds credibility. but it also becomes a pain in the butt to keep on saying these long things
Yeah.
over and over again. So when I'm talking in a seminar and doing a tax seminar, I will say something like, we're going to be addressing the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act a lot because they sunset at the end of 2025, many of those provisions. But instead of saying that over and over again, I'm going to fondly refer to them as the Trump tax cuts, because it was his administration when that went through. And when we talk about the net investment income tax, I will probably say the Obamacare tax. It's meant just to be efficient, not meant to offend anybody. That's what I'm saying. So, and again, if somebody starts to say, well, I hate you saying Trump tax cuts, I hate you saying Obamacare tax, I'll be like, oh man, I'm so glad we're getting it out of the way that we don't want to work together right at the very beginning.
You learn a lot. In that
Right?
moment,
Because that would be honestly, that would be my perspective. If somebody is so fragile on either side, if someone is so volatile on either side, we are definitely not a good fit. Thanks for eliminating that right out of the gate.
Save us some time.
Yeah.
Are you different in your seminar versus if you're one-on-one with a client or prospect?
Probably. Yeah. If I look at my
way? Yeah.
seminars, in my seminars, I'm probably broader, where in my client space, in our conference room, I probably feel a little more confident to narrow that a little bit, still without drawing lines in the sand. But everything in the conference room is just a little bit more intimate, one-on-one, where we're talking about their personal financial situation. So it's the same way I am about taxes and finances. In a seminar, I'm talking about broad, big picture ideas, which is the same with politics. And then in the conference room, I'm talking more specifics, getting down into more of the details.
Yeah.
So it would definitely be, it wouldn't be uncommon at all for me to start talking a little more specifically in the conference room.
We've mentioned the Trump tax cuts. We've mentioned Social Security. Do you let those hot topics that are political kind of skew how you pick your seminar topics in general, especially as you get closer to the election?
No question. We'll do election seminars. Yeah, I don't shy away from the politics, because I can have, with time and with experience and with confidence, I can have full-on seminars where they say, never talk about religion, never talk about politics. I'm like, oh heck yeah, we'll talk about politics, and I'm not worried about talking about religion. From St. George, Utah, religion's on everybody's mind, but also politics. Yeah, it's talking about it without. Honestly, I think what people are looking for is the ability to talk about politics in a non-polarizing way.
Yeah.
To take both sides of a scenario and walk through them.
Yeah.
What might be the positives and negatives either way on either candidate. And so to have that and have it not be confrontational, to have it and not be divisive, I think people appreciate that. Why not? We should be civil discourse. We should all be able to do that.
I think you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
When it comes to those seminars, in your digital campaigns or your marketing campaigns, what are you asking of those entities that you use to put together the mailers and everything to come up with election-centric content to go out?
Yeah, so obviously I use Impact to create the seminars, to build the mailers that we're sending out, or the social media presentations for the slideshows. Everything that's out there that is going to be branded to a political or a candidacy, I'll use Impact to draw all that up for me. And I know how I want all of my seminars to flow and what my normal hook would be on the seminar. But I know we're going to be able to get to the meat of my seminar and the presentation, regardless of what the front end marketing was looking like. But it just so happens that in election time and different candidacies, that's going to go right into taxes and retirement and Social Security changes and the things that our clients are concerned about.
Just kind of funnels right into that way
it's
naturally.
It's an easy segue. Yeah.
I've sat in on enough advisor seminars to know that, yes, hold your questions to the end. There's always someone raising their hand, firing off something. And, it's not always, whoa, get easy there. But when you do get someone that has a very political question, or they have a very political opinion in the middle of your seminar, how do you kind of think on your feet, or did that take some practice or some forethought as to what kind of mic you
Thank goodness
ask?
we live in a country where we all can feel that way or feel differently, right?
But is that your response?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm not afraid to say it. Thank goodness we live in a country where you can say that and feel that way.
Yeah.
This seminar is not about that specific issue. I appreciate your thought.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely entitled to feel that way. And it doesn't matter. And I will have this very conversation in front of a seminar, because my job is to get the seminar back on track and not to let it get derailed. right? So if somebody pipes up, well, that person, rah, 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 and I'm like, you know what? You have a absolute right to feel that way. My job is to, how do I work for my clients? Those people, those politicians, that whole world is going to do whatever they're going to do, right? And I've got my own vote and you've got your own vote to do what we can about that. But more importantly, my profession is how do I help you regardless of what happens there? That's my job. That's what the seminar's about. And that's what I'm going to tell you. Moving on.
Yeah, moving on. So full disclosure, leading up to this, I was looking for talking points and I wanted to work in the phrase all politics is local because I felt like it made sense and it was a nice segue into how you handle local politics. Mm-hmm. And then the more I dug to realize, the less I understood about the term itself. So we'll throw that out.
Okay.
But local politics and where you are, how do they obviously the national stuff is a slam dunk. It's obvious. But when it comes to something that may be more on the minds of your constituency, for lack of a better term, the people local to you, how do you approach handling local politics, whether it's a city council decision or something on the state level?
Yeah, thankfully, I mean, it's got to be a pretty big issue if everybody's talking about it on a local community level, right? Because the big issues are what affects the retirement planning. It's not a local city tax. Somebody might care about a local city bond to build a new library or something like that, or they might care about the mayor who was in some, I don't know, maybe there was some controversy going on with the local politician. Normally on things like that, it's just something I make a joke about, right? That it's out there. But as far as the way it affects their retirement, the way it affects their financial future, so few local politics will affect the big picture of their finances that it's been pretty easy to steer away from that kind of one side or the other locally, because it really doesn't affect the big picture financially.
Well, it's kind of like the saying, wrestling with a pig, no one wins because he'll enjoy it and you'll get all muddy kind of thing.
Yeah, we both get dirty and the pig likes it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
From a financial advisor's perspective, it feels like whether it's talking about elections or talking about any kind of volatility in the market, it's about creating sort of that flow chart of potential outcomes. And if this happens, you have this. Yeah. And it boiling down to these are the moments why you have a financial advisor.
Yeah.
Is that sort of how you approach elections in general?
Absolutely. If this, then that. If this happens, then that. If the Trump tax cuts do sunset and expire at the end of 2025, this is what it will look like. This is what you should be thinking about. If they are extended, or if Social Security taxes are eliminated by one party or the other, by one candidate or another, or one president or one cabinet, whatever happens there, this is what it'll look like. And here's our plan. I've got you covered. And that's exactly what my clients want to hear. Yeah, I got you, regardless.
I'm going to get you out of here on this because I want to. Did you bring your crystal ball?
Yeah, I know exactly what's going to happen.
Perfect. Let's hold on to that. We'll save that for the next week's podcast.
No, it's easy. Half the country's going to be unhappy.
But in terms of what are the talking points that you're going to your clients with? Not necessarily I think that this is going to be the outcome, but I think these topics, Social Security, are going to be, we're going to have a clearer understanding of if one person wins, this will be what happens to that topic.
Yeah. So what I look at there is the checks and balances system we have within our federal politics, right? Because we'll be talking so much about who's going to be the next president. And it's easy to remember that during the first term of a President Trump, he had a conservative House and a conservative Senate. Mm-hmm. And so having Republicans with the majority in the government, right, in all the branches of the government for that matter, because also the Supreme Court comes along and President Trump appoints more judges. But we had a very conservative political spectrum at that time, and they still got very little done that would affect clients. Not saying they got a little done as politicians, but as far as the tax changes, they got the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act done, but it took 2.5 years to get that in. So if one party or the other wins, there's, again, depending on what's going on in the House and the Senate, could be executive orders, but I like to remind my clients that politicians do such a terrible job of working together. And it's so partisan right now that making big, huge, sweeping changes is really difficult. The catastrophic changes, but that's what the media sells, right? Mm-hmm. Democracy will fail if he or she is elected. Yeah. Right? I worry about our future. I don't know what will happen. Will we even have a country again? I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. I think that if President Trump was to win the election, there's going to be some changes, there'll be some good things, and there's going to be some bad things, and there's going to be half of the country that's unhappy about it for one reason or another. And if Kamala gets in, there's going to be some good things and there's going to be some bad things, and half of the country is going to be upset about it for some reason or another. And that's because we are divided on it. And really, big media, I think, is doing a great job of keeping us that way because it keeps people watching.
I feel like if there's one kind of through line throughout this for a financial advisor specifically, it's being kind of level-headed, being able to see both sides, but also they measure the ocean in calm seas, not where the biggest wave is.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weathering the storm and seeing the clear and being level-headed.
Yeah. So in a political time like this, the best thing that a financial professional, in my opinion, can do is where all of the focus is way out here, turn the focus right back to the client. That's what they want to hear. I am worried about you. Whatever happens out there, I got you. And my planning and what we're doing here, we're going to work with you and figure out a way no matter what happens out there. And that is the safe place for every advisor. Well, what about this? Well, what about that? I got you. What about this? Got you. What about that? Yep, still got you. That's what the clients want to hear.
So I've got some bad news for you then.
Uh-oh.
Your nickname is no longer the Pickleball Maestro.
Uh-oh.
Because you're a pro financial advisor. I mean, this was outstanding, and I thank you for really being able to shine a light on the younger advisor that's trying to get their comfort level up in those uncomfortable situations, because they ultimately shouldn't be uncomfortable.
They don't need to be.
I hope this has been insightful for any financial advisor, really, and really just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what you can find on our YouTube channel. Obviously, Ready, Set, Grow, but also House Rules, where Alex House dives into the marketing component of it, and then Selling with Stories with Randy Cook, in which we frame the conversation and prepare financial advisors to have these uncomfortable conversations. So those are both great resources for a financial advisor. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and obviously the podcast. Get it wherever you get your podcasts.